if there's one thing that's consistent, is that you're gonna screw up, right? You're gonna make mistakes almost every single day. Have no shame in being an entrepreneur and being a capitalist, because good things happen when we are successful.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Jack Boss Show. Yes, we called our podcast the Jack Boss Show.
It's a great name.
And yes, where we talk about all things real estate, finances, and wealth creation. And today, I got an expert on all of it here with me. Social media influencer, one of the best real estate podcasts in the country. Owns a title company, is a wholesaler. What else do you do?
Sales trainer.
Sales trainer, of course, huge sales trainer.
Realtor,
Realtor. You just you had a realtor.
We just shut down our brokerage. Yeah, we just shut down our brokerage of 120 realtors. Yeah.
And anyway, what do I need to say? Steve Trangs, he's a legend in the industry. Steve, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I don't feel like I'm a legend. I feel like I've still got a lot of growing up to do.
Well, we all do, but that doesn't mean you make you less of a legend.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So great, welcome. So where do we start? Which part do you want to talk about first? I mean, we have you do so many. Let's talk about that. How in the world do you do so many things?
I wouldn't say it's graceful. So first and foremost, I'm going to qualify that. I think the biggest thing is I've been very fortunate to find incredible, hardworking, well-meaning people, right? I have been, along the way, been able to, if you look at like a journey, you're able to pick up some tools and so on. I've been able to attract some incredibly high caliber individuals to join us in my journey, right? Like, we've got a person that's right now, she's handling our finances. She's been with me for 7 years. I believe we've got world-class salespeople, world-class media people, world-class marketing people. It's just, I've been able to find people that are not only good at what they do, they're actually passionate about what they do, and they want to learn about it off the clock. Wonderful. Right? Yeah. So
that's really crucial. So with all these different things, let's bring it together again. So you had a title company. You have a title company.
I have a title company.
You have a title company. You had also a brokerage, which you shut down. We'll talk about in a second, perhaps why. But then you basically almost vertically integrated on the real estate side of things. Is that something you grew in on? You build on purpose, or is it more like
yes,
you saw the opportunity? Hey, you can make some money there. You can make some money here, or
yeah. So. According to my friends, I can't focus, right?
Okay.
I'm trying to do too many things. But on the outside looking in, everything is in the real estate vertical. It's not, except we got one new venture that's going to be starting. We're launching it a week from tomorrow. That'll be the first thing that's not real estate related.
Okay.
Everything else has been real estate related, and it's for a very specific reason. It's because we can increase our revenue without learning something completely new, right? It's tangentially related one way or another, right? Like when we started our title venture, it was along the same time we did a mortgage partnership as well. I already had an existing brokerage. So the way you would look at it is like, when you go buy McDonald's, if you buy the Big Mac, they might make a nickel on the Big Mac, right? But they're making the full boat on the fries and the Coke.
Right.
So for me, if I can get you to do a real estate transaction with me, and then I can make the loan and the title company, I'm doing pretty good. Now that mortgage thing is no longer present today, right?
Correct.
But for a period of time, it did pretty well for us too.
Yeah.
Right? So that's like the fries and Coke. It's just like Best Buy, right? Like they don't make any money on a refrigerator, but they get 100% on that extended warranty.
That's right.
Right? So that's the reason why we keep adding these things. Like we're already doing the first part, which is getting someone in the door. But if we can add additional revenue for each part,
particularly high margin revenues, basically.
Exactly.
That's the high margin pieces that the outside world doesn't necessarily see, and then you got the customer already. Why not offer them fries with that? And
absolutely, you have a captive audience.
Yes, makes sense. That's fascinating. That's a very brilliant business model to expand from there. So now let's quickly go to the different things. So, for example, the title company now. The brokerage. Now, why did you shut that one down?
Well, it was profitable. Okay. However, it required me, right? And if you can run a business that doesn't depend on you, how many transactions can you do?
Right.
Infinite. But if it was reliant on you, then there's only so many you can do. So with me, at our peak, we're at like 120 something realtors. I think when we shut it down, we were at like 70 realtors. It just didn't make sense for the amount of time and really headache involved and the amount of money coming in. So we're making about the same money now, maybe a little bit less, but I have zero stress, zero responsibility, ethics complaints, violations, this and that. My phone's not ringing anymore. It is now someone else's responsibility.
Okay, sounds good. So you and you didn't really shut it down. You just took all the agents and joined another organization.
Yeah, we joined a brokerage. We joined Real, right, which is a lot like EXP. It's an MLM. I have no shame saying it's an MLM, right? I believe it's a valuable MLM. But at the end of the day, right, it's an MLM model, but it made sense for myself and it made sense for the realtors that followed me along, right? Mm-hmm. So everyone's winning here. And the cool thing is that the ones that followed me are doing better as well as a result of leaving or closing our brokerage and joining Real. Yeah,
and you have less headaches. So they're doing better. You have no more headaches. Yeah, sometimes
I still have headaches, just not related to the brokerage.
That's right. Not those anymore.
Yeah.
And that's perhaps a good message to send, that a lot of people have a big hurdle of like shutting something down, particularly if it's profitable. But it makes me money. Why should I stay? Shouldn't I stay in it? And sometimes you need to ask your question is like, how can I mean, you're still making money through the brokerage now, right, just to Real.
Well, I mean,
but with 99% less work now.
So there's something I learned from a mentor of mine, Dan Nicholson, right? Which is the question is, knowing what I know now, would I do this again? Mm-hmm. Right. So that's the first question, right? Put another way, hey Jack, would you buy this brokerage for $500,000? If you're worth $500,000 a year, would you buy this brokerage for $500,000? And for most people, the answer should be hell no. So if the answer is no, then why would you keep it? And it's hard to emotionally detach yourself. Mm-hmm. When we had our grand opening for our brokerage, I also had Vivian, right? She was just born in November of 2012, and we opened in January 2013. So
your daughter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter. So I can see, right? When we closed the brokerage, it was just shy of her 10th birthday. So it's 10 years we poured into it. So it's hard, but we're business people. We're not here to, just necessarily feel good or be emotionally attached to the outcomes.
That's exactly right, and that's not always easy.
No, it's not.
All right, good. So then one thing is, so how does the podcast? Well, you're also a big influencer. Mm-hmm. You're all over the place. You're in different platforms. You have a very, very loyal following, yeah, and then a very high. Your podcast has a huge listenership and so on. So where does that fit in? That was that the lead generator? Was that something, a desire to get the word out?
I was trying to marry two different worlds, which I guess were never meant to be married. We'll see. Which is the realtor community and the wholesaling community. Because I was always like the black hat, right? Like I was a realtor that also wholesaled, and it's like they don't like each other for whatever reason, And so I was trying to, when I first launched the show, it was like I was alternating between wholesaler, realtor. And what I found was no one cared about the realtor part, right? And so I kind of had this like MSNBC, Fox News thing, right? Like, do I want to present both sides? Or do I want to just pick a side and just go hard on it? Right. So we picked a side, wholesaling, and went hard on it. And so we really focused on wholesaling, but I think there's the two things was I wanted to marry this world. Then I came to the realization pretty quickly that this world just does not want to be married. And B, selfishly, I got to learn from the best operators in the country. Mm-hmm. And so if you listen to the show, it's not that different than when I used to take someone out to lunch and pick their brains, right? I was always very intentional. I was like, hey, Jack, I see what you're doing. Now, you might say no, right? But I might say, hey, Jack, I like what you're doing. Can I take you out to lunch and just ask you some questions? The top producing realtors had no issues with me, right? And you're talking about Russell Shaw, the Callaways, who I believe dominate this area, right? Mm-hmm. They had no problems with me stopping by, talking to them, and picking their brains. My show is basically a pick the brain session for like an hour and a half.
And that apparently you've done that in a way that a lot of people pay attention to it. So pay attention to this podcast. Yeah. It's great.
Well, the things that people have said is that I ask the questions that they want to ask but don't get to ask. So I feel like I'm a man of the people. I get to represent the people.
Mm-hmm. So what questions do you think our audience wants to know about you?
I mean, the questions they want to ask me, I think probably is maybe, why do you do what you do? It might be, is this something you want to keep doing forever? I don't know.
Let's go. Let's go. So how did you get into real estate, and why do you do real estate?
Well, I think like everyone else, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Like
Right.
you learn about this way to make money passively, and you have a freedom number. But because I'm an entrepreneur, I also have shiny object syndrome. So I learned that you should buy properties and make passive income. And then in the process of buying properties, I learned about being a realtor. So then I started chasing active income, which has nothing to do with passive income, right? So I wasted like 9 years of my life doing the realtor thing, completely forgetting the message in the book. But why real estate? It's because this is the best vehicle with the lowest barrier to entry. I am not aware of any other industry where you can make as much money as you want, so long as you're willing to put in the work required to get it, with really no barrier to entry. One thing I've talked about in the past, I'm passionate about, may be controversial, is that I love the fact that it doesn't matter even if you're a convicted felon, right? You can still do real estate. Right. Like if you look at, they're trying to regulate this, and I don't like this regulation component because they want to regulate wholesaling. Are there some bad actors out there? Absolutely. But my biggest fear is if we regulate wholesaling, then we're going to, again, disenfranchise the convicted felons. And then now what do they do? Right. So like we want to get these people out of prison and actually have a good, honest living. And then, by the way, this good, honest living is no longer available to you.
Yeah, and nobody gives them a job anyway. So
yeah, they can't get a job.
Yeah.
They can't get a job. So they have to be self-employed, which I think is actually a good thing. But then they can't do that particular thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about that, but I know one person. I don't know many. I mean, not that they volunteer, that they're convicted fellows in the first place, but yeah. I know one that has actually spent like 6 years in prison and completely reformed now, and lives here in town and is doing fantastic, and is takes care of his family and everything like that.
Yeah, they're contributing members to society that we might disenfranchise in the future. Who knows? We talked about Mavericks before the show, right? We as an industry generally attract people that are very independent and don't follow rules.
That's right. Yeah, 100%.
And so again, like the people we attract potentially into this industry could have a troubled past that are trying to do things right moving forward.
I can see that, yeah, and I guess that makes sense. So now let's switch subjects for a little bit. You do a podcast, or not a podcast, but you do some videos where you sit with your daughter and you look at things. Tell us about that. How did it come about? And what do you guys talk about? And what are you trying to accomplish with that?
Well, it wasn't my idea, it was her idea, right? So I'm talking to the team, I was like, hey, we've got this other channel, we got Real Estate Disruptors, we got this whole other Steve Trangs channel that we're just not doing anything with it. You guys want me to create more content, like how can we create more content? They're like, well, what do we do reaction videos? Like, okay, sure, let's do reaction videos. I'm willing to try anything, right? I would say one of my superpowers and strengths is I'm willing to do something really hard, go all out, and fail, and then move on without slowing down, right? So I said, all right, let's do this reaction channel. So I'm talking to my wife over dinner. I say, hey, this is something we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be doing a reaction show. And my oldest daughter, Amelia, says, well, I'm doing it with you. I was like, what? She's like, I'm joining you. I said, I didn't ask you. She says, yeah, I know, but I'm doing it. So she invited herself on, and we've done it, and it's actually been...
right there is a new, not rule follower.
Not rule follower, no. I love her. I love her to death. She's gonna be a salesperson. Right? She does not accept no. So she just invited herself on, and that has been some of my best performing reels. So we have our YouTube reaction show, doesn't do so well. We get, I think, like tens of views. It's very discouraging given the experience I have to get tens of views. However, on Instagram, we get, I think we were looking at it the other day, like 11,000 was on the one we talked about inflation. So what we talk about is the kind of things that we actually talk about at home, which is like how the world really works, money, ethics, and all these other things, right? Because they don't teach you these things in school. So as parents, we have to teach it to them. And so she's sharing her perspective on crypto, on inflation, on when's the right time to have a cell phone. Like we've had multiple videos in entrepreneurship, real estate, and this and that. And we watch these shows and we watch these reels or YouTube videos and we react to them. And she's got, for someone that just turned 12 a couple days ago, she's got a ton of insight. So it's been a lot of fun.
Beautiful. I like that. So now let's, after we now have a better picture of Steve Trang and what you do and so on, let's talk into some of your favorite two things that you probably, well, other than social media, that you're most well known at. You're world-class sales trainer. You train a lot of people in our industry.
Yes.
And you obviously also wholesale houses.
Right.
And so tell us about how's your business structured in that way? How many people do you have on each side? On the wholesale side, how does your team look like? Let's start with the wholesale side first.
The wholesale side, we got, right now, we're down to one acquisition manager. We got 2 lead managers, so they're the ones that set the appointments for our acquisition manager. 1 disposition manager, he's the one that sells the properties that he contracts. 1 transaction coordinator, and then 1 integrator, a COO, who makes sure that everything is working properly.
And with that model, how much volume can you do with that model?
Well, what can we do and what are we doing are 2 different stories,
Sure.
right? So what you could do 10, 20 deals a month. I mean, you look at our friend Doug Hopkins, right? You can do that. With us right now, we're only doing a handful of transactions, like 2, 3 transactions a month. The good thing with our model is that when we do transactions, they're very profitable transactions. Our average fee in the last 12 months has been $29,000 per transaction, right? So we don't really need to do a lot to be profitable. But with that being said, what we're doing, what we should be able to do with that model, are 2 different stories.
And what holds you from doing more? You just don't want to?
Oh, it's not for that. It comes down to our marketing budget and how much we want to spend. So last year was a major gut punch for myself.
Sure.
Right? We had drastically grown. Like we absorbed our neighbor, right? So we absorbed our neighboring suite, which you'll see tomorrow when you come to my office. And we hired a bunch of people because we were going all in on media. So, we tend to, as entrepreneurs, spend as much as we make. And so as our revenues had increased, we increased our expenses as well. And then, the market changed.
Right.
So I would say that our wholesale operation is not running with the right amount of fuel. So we've got like a really nice sports car, but at this exact moment, we're not putting in enough gas.
Okay. And so let's talk about that market transition right now. So do you think the market transition as we are right now are we through what you called and what I also call the gap, right? The gap being the sellers still expect this, the buyers want to pay this. There's always a time of transition, particularly as the market shifts, where this.
Well, what's interesting is that our market's already appreciating again, right? Like we had a buyer's market for 1 week in December, right? Like
what we're talking about here, by the way, we're talking about the Phoenix, Arizona market, where both Steve and I are located.
Yeah, so in Phoenix, Arizona, we had a buyer's market for 1 week in December, and since then it's been a seller's market again.
Okay.
And so we've had steady appreciation from January until today.
All right.
Right? And so you can't be upset with the sellers for wanting, close to fair market value if you're using comps for the last 6 months, because that's actually fair. So then our buyer side, though, is where the biggest challenge is. A lot of the people we would sell to, the buyer that's fix and flipper, he has to account for a much longer hold time, and he does have to take into account.
In spite of us being in the seller's market, we're not in a hyper market again. It doesn't sell in a matter of a week. It's not a fast market. It's not a fast market.
It's a seller's market where you can command your price and be non-negotiable. But how long it takes for you to get that offer is a lot longer, right? So days on market went from like 3 days to now it's like a couple months, 3 months. And so as a flipper, I understand their holding costs could be 3 months on top of dealing with contractors, on top of there is a real risk that with another Fed rate hike, like the bottom fell out again for no reason. Right. So what we have to deal with then is not the gap from the seller, but really is the buyer side. And that's a different challenge because the people that fix and flip for a living are really good in negotiations. They negotiate for a living. They negotiate with contractors all day. They negotiate with wholesalers all day. They negotiate with realtors. And they negotiate with end buyers. So that is the biggest gap right now. It's not so much that the sellers are unrealistic, is that what buyers are underwriting at. And for us to be able to get a discount steep enough, that's the great challenge today.
Okay, I see. That's certainly a bigger challenge because now the bigger challenge is now with the professionals.
The professionals who negotiate for a living.
And they're not going to budge.
Right? If I came to you, Jack, it's like, well, Jack, here's where we need to be at. You'd be like, well, too bad.
Right.
Right? I'll buy something else.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So what is your expectation? Is your expectation for that to go away? Are you waiting and just basically keeping it operating at that where it's profitable, but not the sports car, I like the analogy, not enough fuel until you see the market conditions improve a little bit and then you put the extra super good fuel in it?
I would say that right now, given the uncertainty in the market, we're not really going all in. So we're just tempering the market, right? We're seeing where this thing goes because we don't have a clear, like, this is what the market's going to do. Like, the greatest challenge to any economic market is uncertainty, right? Like, we had massive certainty until middle of last year.
Right.
Fed rates started hiking back in January, but no one really paid attention, right? But we had massive certainty from I would say the end of 2022, end of 2020, when, you know, people kind of got COVID fatigue, until middle of 2022. It was a pretty good run, right? But why was there such a good run? Everyone was certain. Now we got this uncertainty, and this is what's causing this gap in the underwriting. But when will it get better? I can't say, because this uncertainty gap will persist until something significant changes. Whether the Fed says we're going to stop messing around, we got the stupid debt ceiling negotiation going on right now. We got China and Russia convincing all the oil countries to stop using the US dollar as a reserve currency. We've got some uncertainty out there right now.
Yeah, we do. Although that part, I looked into that a little bit deeper, and I think that's more noise than anything else.
Sure.
Because if you look at how much these countries make up of the world currency, it's like that much.
Yeah.
So it could be a threat over like the next 20 years. And I think for the world currency to not be the US dollar, but anything related to China and Russia need to become, first of all, world-class democratic countries. Not that the US really is, but that's a different subject.
we're better.
We're better, right? We're better. Again.
Maybe not by much, but we're better.
And we have a long history of being better, right?
Yes, yeah.
And they have a long history of not being better.
Correct.
And that's the piece. So
Yeah,
that's where they separate. So
Right.
That would have to be overcome by the entire Western world, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I think that's right now a lot of noise that the media makes it noisier, creates some uncertainty, but behind the scenes, I don't think anyone counts for that.
But either way, we're inserting
Russian
doubt.
ruble to become the world currency anytime soon.
But either way, we're still inserting doubt, which is the problem.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah. Moving on then to the other part, how does your training business look like? Your sales training business? I mean, you also offer real estate coaching, right?
Yeah, we do. But I would say the real estate sales training is the thing I'm most passionate about.
Yes, I can tell, because recently we're in several groups together. We are both investors in the bank together. We are different kind of things, but that the sales training is where I hear your name all the time, and hear people call you praises.
Yeah, well, and it's always an honor when you hear that. So for me, the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because I was so bad at it. You know. Okay. Being an engineer is not generally, considered a good background for sales.
Correct.
And so I was an absolute...
Being German is not either.
Well, I think there's a lot of parallels in German engineering. So
I'm not an engineer, but still, yeah.
Right. And so I struggled. I sold, right? I was still a quote unquote successful salesperson, but I only won my sales because you just trusted me. When I met with you and I sat with you at the dining table, you knew that I was highly competent, and you knew that I was very genuine and I cared, right? You could feel that from me. I didn't know how to replicate it. I didn't know how to teach that, but that's what I had. But I would never win by getting you excited. I could never sell you a dream vacation or a network marketing thing or like a nice car. I couldn't sell you these things because I'm not an emotional person. But if you were going through something super challenging, I can walk you through it and help you feel comfortable to get to the other side. Something like a nurse or a doctor, right? That's who you'd want. You don't want Robin Williams per se, right, to come in and help you with your medical treatment. You want a highly competent person that cares.
Right.
And so, as I was struggling with being a quality salesperson, somewhere along the way, I learned from the Sandler selling system, and this thing just hit me like a ton of bricks, right? It just helped me understand what I was doing wrong, and I was doing things in the wrong order. And so once I learned that, it provided a foundation for everything else I learned in sales. I've read, 20, 30 different sales books, but I've been able to kind of culminate this. I think Leon Barnes, our friend, called this a gumbo, right? Like Steve's got the gumbo, magic gumbo for selling. And I've just been able to piece together all the things that are effective. And so now, before when you had a friend that was a great natural salesperson, he just got it, right? It was just this thing that he just has it. Now I can break this down and engineer it. I can tell you why he's got it. I can tell you A, B, C, D, and every tactic, every technique he used, which he doesn't know because he's just naturally gifted.
Right.
But because I sucked at it, I had to break it down and re-engineer sales. I can explain to you everything well that they're doing and why it's effective, and I can teach that now to anybody.
Give us an example.
What kind of example are you looking for exactly?
Like of something that a natural salesperson would do just naturally, but that you can identify as actually a learnable skill.
Sure. So if you talk to a person that is super cheerful, right, they're going to be, their emotional range is going to go up and down. Their voice, it's going to be a lot more voice modulation. Their hand gestures are going to be open, right, versus closed, right? So for myself, I naturally have, I'm more calm in demeanor or less, I move less. But if I want to inject energy, I'm just going to be louder. I have more voice modulation. And my hands are going to be open, right? Because this generates more trust, right? So there's these kinds of things that when you're talking to a person like this versus a person that's like this, right? Which you and I are doing naturally,
yeah,
you're going to generate more as an open person, right?
I can connect like this though.
If you're trying to close a big sale, I would mirror the other person.
Yes,
right?
I understand.
Right?
Yeah, and I sometimes do that actually purposefully, and sometimes not. But the hand thing, I mean, you're not talking sitting like this, but just like don't sit like this. Let's open it more. When you move your hands, don't move your hands like this. Move your hands more.
But if you
like
watch someone, kind of like the odds are, as you guys are watching this, just look at the most successful influencers. You're gonna see they're gonna be doing this, right? Their hands are gonna be a lot more open. It's gonna be a lot more moving, and there's gonna be a lot more moving back and forth, right? It's these kinds of things that it's a lot of energy, and a lot of sales, the charismatic, the more naturally gifted salespeople, they can transfer emotion, right? And so if you want to transfer emotion, you gotta bring in a lot more energy. The reason why, if you look at all the people in media or Hollywood, that the reason why they're so successful is because they can transfer energy across the camera more than anybody else. What I didn't understand until I started doing media is that you have to be so exaggerated on camera to look normal on camera, right? And so these big giant personalities.
You do too. In order, they tell you in theater, first of all, they put like makeup up that thick so that the last row can see that there's still makeup. But it's same with the hand gestures because you can't just do like this. Nobody sees that for the back. You got to do like this in order for it to be seen. So is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly it, right? Yeah. So it's those kinds of things, saying their name a lot, touching their arms, touching their shoulders, right? Being super close, these kinds of things. If you're trying to replicate a high energy salesperson, a person that you want to be friends with immediately.
So you put this down, and now you put it down almost like a gumbo or a formula. When a gumbo, in my mind, sounds like stuff is all over the place and it's moving. But in your case, it's more like we talked about that initially. You were doing things in the wrong sequence.
Right.
So now, what is like on a high level a good sequence for that?
So a sequence I would have in the past, where I come over to your house, ask you what's going on, and I show you comps. Right. Here's what your house is worth. And I educate you, if you work with us, here's what happens next. If you don't work with us, here are your other options, right? Super, super helpful, super service-oriented, right? Sucks at sales. It's not an effective selling method, right? So now the process is different. I don't go for the close after I've educated you. Now I'm going to say, hey, Jack, before we start, at the end, I'm going to look for a yes or a no. And if I hear anything besides a yes or no, I'm just going to take that as a no. Is that fair, right? There's a much better way of saying that with courtesy and professionalism. But more or less, I'm closing in the first 15 minutes for a yes or a no. Not a yes, for a yes or a no. I'm getting a commitment from you that's going to be a yes or a no. And then the rest of the time, I'm going to talk about why you're selling. And then we're going to figure out what price you're looking to get. We're going to figure out who are some other decision makers that might, gunk up our deal. And exactly when you'd like this done by, right? And then once we get through all that, we're going to summarize it. And then we're going to put everything in writing, and we're going to sign a contract. And then after I get the signed contract, I'm going to tell you, by the way, Jack, here are the next steps. We're going to have people come through your home. We're going to open escrow. We're going to move aside funds and all these other things, right? All the educating happens after you and I have a firm agreement we're doing business together. Because what was happening before is I was giving all this information away for free, and then they would ghost me, right? Mm-hmm. Was I getting sales? Yes, but it's only because I spent a ton of marketing, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't because I was a natural salesperson. Now, I'm going to figure out what you want. I'm going to be able to service it. Well, after I figure out what you want, I'm going to figure out whether I can do it or not. And if I can do it, I'm going to have you sign a contract, low pressure. And after you sign the contract, I'm going to give you the next steps. And it's crazy, but those next steps are the things that might kill a deal. But once they sign the contract, it's not going to kill a deal.
Right.
So.
Because now it's just let's fulfill the contract.
Yeah, now we're just going to honor the contract.
Yeah,
yeah.
That makes sense. Right there's a guy to hire, right? He is. You can come in and do this with organization, with people and teams and things like that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is the thing I'm most passionate about because I was so bad at it. It's so important to me to teach it, but also teach it the right way. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that teach high pressure sales, like car sales techniques, and we're not necessarily service oriented. It's absolutely important to me, paramount to me, that this is service oriented, but we can't service people unless they agree they want to do business with us.
It reminds me a little bit of like I noticed that coming from Europe in the soccer world, that almost always the best players, the most talented, the most natural, the most successful, like the top stars, became really crappy coaches.
They can't coach
because they don't know why they're so good. They're naturally good.
You can't articulate that.
The best coaches are ones that never made it into the top league.
Right.
They played second league, they played for college, they played whatever this, and they were like in the special teams or so, and they never made it to become one of the starting lineup because they had to fight for every little skill and they had to really analyze it and learn it. But because of that, they can now translate it.
Yeah, they had to hone their craft, right? Like I think Bill Belichick, if I remember correctly, he was a linebacker in West Point, right? He never made it in the NFL. I think Nick Saban maybe played one season in the NFL, right? Yeah. Maybe. But they're amazing coaches because they understand the X's and O's better than anybody else.
Yeah, even like Maradona in soccer, right? Mm-hmm. Famous, legendary soccer player. He actually became a coach at some point of time, but failed. He became the national coach, failed, and again, because he was 15 years old. He was one of the best players in the world already.
Yeah.
You don't know. He just naturally gifted. So
yeah, he doesn't know necessarily what it feels like to struggle, and he doesn't necessarily understand all these things. It just comes so easy he can't explain it, right? Like the example I always use is like if Michael Jordan was your coach, you just had to jump higher, right? You can't say what he does exactly well. He does it, but can he articulate it at a level where everyone can understand?
Why his team sucks so bad.
I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
What would you like to leave our audience with? What is kind of like what's your, if you look back, let's go that way for just a second. If you look back into all the things that you've done right now, and all the things that you started, that you shut down, that you put energy in, that you take energy out, that you currently spend energy in, is there something that stands out as kind of a success recipe for it, or a recipe not just for success but also for fulfillment?
So I will take two different things, right? So the fulfillment I'll do second. So the first thing is it takes a lot of grit, right? We say ego, and ego is generally associated with a negative connotation. Like that person's got a big ego. But you need a strong ego in entrepreneurship to be a business owner. Because if there's one thing that's consistent is that you're going to screw up, right? You're going to make mistakes almost every single day, right? You're going to say something maybe you didn't give enough thought, and you might have said something carelessly, right? Or you say, guys, this is what we're going to do. This is the future, and it's completely wrong, right? We're going to go after this.
Just happened to us.
Yeah, we're going to go after this account. Doesn't work out, right? They already committed to somebody else. So there are no shortages of failures. And so, being able to start, fail, try again, recalibrate, I think it takes a good amount of grit and be able to handle adversity. So I think that's the first thing. That if there's anything I can teach or preach on, is that. Second thing, fulfillment. I love watching people win. When I started, it was all about me, right? How can I live the life that I want, right? And that was pretty consistent until I started my brokerage. And when I started my brokerage is when the first time I started bringing people in, and helping them with their businesses. And once I saw people winning, right? You bring in people that are making $30,000 a year as a server, and they walk out making $300,000 a year. That feels really good. So for me, talking about the sales training, it's impactful for me because I see people's lives changing. So for fulfillment,
there might have been something good about after all about the brokerage, right?
Lots of good things happen with the brokerage.
It changed your outlook on how you want to operate in business and life, right?
Yeah, it was what's that? Scrooge, right? It's Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Right. I had that was my Christmas Carol moment, but I didn't have to become a realtor, right? Like eventually I would have figured that out.
Right.
Being a realtor was still not the right decision. And then, as a final message, one thing I've been preaching on is I talk about create 100 millionaires. And Elias on my team challenged me, like, why 100 millionaires? And it took me a while to figure this out. But, a lot of what I do is I want to preach the gospel of entrepreneurship and capitalism. I don't know exactly when it happened, but sometime in the last 12 to 15 years, profit became a bad word, right? I don't know why, but it did. And, you see how much good we can do when we are successful, right? I have, my grandparents fled communism in China, right? So my grandparents fled, they had everything taken, they fled to Vietnam, and they rebuilt everything, had a good life again. And then communism took over again, and they lost everything again, right? So we see what happens when you want equality of outcome for everybody, right? And so for me, one of the things that really drives me is on top of fulfillment and helping other people is just get everyone that, is into personal development and listening to podcasts such as these is like to have no shame in being an entrepreneur and being a capitalist because good things happen when we are successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. Like, it's by now a little chewed out, but it's like they say, like money doesn't change your character. Money shows your character.
It reveals it.
Yeah, and it enlarges it. So if you're a good person, you can do more good with it. And
absolutely.
If you're a bad person, well, then you do some shady stuff with it.
Yeah, right? Unfortunately, you do bad things with it.
Yeah. So, but I'm glad you're here. I wish you nothing but further success. Give us a couple of things about how people can reach you.
Yeah. So, Real Estate Disruptors is our podcast. You can find it on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify. We are launching something coming up in the next week, salesdisruptors.com. Okay. And from there, you're going to be able to learn at a much more affordable cost than what we've been charging, everything we've been teaching about sales.
All right. So right there we go. This is it. Watch his podcast, listen to his podcast, watch his videos, subscribe to him as an influencer, hire him or wait for salesdisruptors.com. Wait for salesdisruptors.com to come up and go. Learn to become a salesperson and build that life of abundance. With that said, thank you very much. Bye-bye.